So hello and welcome to today's Info2Go webinar. My name is Annie Gaines and I'm the Continuing Education Consultant here at the Idaho Commission for Libraries, located in chilly yet sunny Boise, Idaho. Our webinars and other continuing education opportunities are funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Everyone is muted and we encourage you to use the chat feature to ask questions and discuss with other attendees. As you exit the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete an evaluation, and as always, we appreciate your honest feedback. Today's topic is all about moving a library, and our presenter is Maria Cottle from the Meridian Library District. Maria, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, Annie. This is fun. A little nerve-wracking, but fun.
Yes.
All right, just to introduce, I love seeing all the weather report from all the different places. It's so cool to see so many people from all over the country and to see some of our neighbors, Northern Idaho Star, Middleton. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Just to introduce myself a little further, I'm Maria Cottle. I work at the Meridian Library District, specifically at the Pinnacle Library. I'm a supervisor, and we recently just opened September 30th. And after we opened, we were like, we might want to share some ideas of what we learned and some of the things that we tried and actually worked well with others. So I'm so glad you're here, either watching this live or in a recording later. And I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right, so moving a library, tips, tricks, and lessons learned. I co-created this PowerPoint with my manager, Dusty Waltner, and we basically, both of us had moved different libraries in our past, and it was great being a manager and a supervisor together when we were moving our current library, because we used some of this tips and tricks that we'd used for other libraries, but also created some new ones together for our situation, because every single time it's just a bit different. So our grand opening of the Meridian Library at Pinnacle was on September 30th. It's now been open a little over around 5 months, and it was a great day. We had so much fun. We had news there. We had all these different partners and we had patrons coming from everywhere, but it was a lot of work to get to that day. And honestly, I don't think most people realized that our work started even further back than when I have our slides. Like, we were working on this 5 years ago, but actually I was hired originally for this library eventually to be built, but which was 8 years ago. But honestly, the on the boots groundwork to get this library going did start a year ago. Just as a heads up as well, if you have any comments you'd like to share, in any questions about a slide, please just put it in the chat. At the end of each slide, I will pause for a bit just to see if, and Annie will ask me any questions you may have, because I know it's hard to remember those questions at the end of the slideshow. So I will pause for a little bit at the end of each slide, but I'm definitely not all knowing, but I'm just excited to share some of the tips and tricks we learned. And we will also have enough time at the end I'll try to make sure we have enough time for more questions. Our first slide is organizational tools. So we actually use Google Suite. So this is just a regular Google document, and we were able to use it to send everyone week by week what should be happening in this schedule. And my manager and I regularly met to discuss what we should add to it, what things we had a sleepless night about because it just came to our head, and then we put in the general needs of that thing. So it was one of the ways we were able to communicate with all the library district. I highly recommend having some different organizational tools, using whatever medium you have to be able to share out with everyone who's working with you so that you all are on the same page. And if you have any more questions about that, just Dusty, my manager, was actually even more about that, but I can answer some questions. All right. I'll go ahead and move to the next slide. So we did start planning this 1 year out. Our biggest things that we worked on, of course, we started weeding. Now, for some people that have talked to me later about this, they're like, why did you start weeding so early? You're moving to a bigger library. You need more books. Why would you get rid of books? So our collection had been 15 years old, and we had been weeding throughout, but it really needed a good weeding. So we started a year out because we wanted to give ourselves plenty of time. And also because there are things that happen later on in the move that cost money. And we did not want to waste that extra dollars on items that really did not, they weren't worth moving. So we went through and started weeding the board books. We had board books that had literally been so sticky they stuck together and couldn't open. We got rid of those. Board books that were falling apart. Um, Picture books that had huge tears in them, colors all over them, and different things that we just missed over the years. And we made our collection as pristine as we could and as ready to move as we could. And that by doing it starting a year in advance, by the time we were at 6 months in advance, we were mostly done and we could start doing the next steps that were necessary. And it did save us money and time, which are both things that you need a lot of when you're moving. FFE drafts, so furniture, fixtures, equipment, started at least a year in advance, trying to figure out what kind of shelving we need, what kind of furniture we need. We planned out power outlets. We purposely had more power outlets than we thought we needed, just because you never know if you're going to have another printer or you're like, this is where the laminator should go. Different things. You always have a need for an outlet. We started sharing out our floor plans and really getting the rest of the staff involved and understanding what was going on. But first, as manager and supervisor, and also as like the head people in our library, we wanted to make sure everyone saw the floor plans and that they were what we actually wanted, because there were there were things that came up that we could talk about, and it was good to have it done before the building started actually happening. Also, at the 1 year mark before we opened, the teams of people to meet monthly for updates. We had managers, supervisors, facilities, people in charge of like keeping our building clean. They needed a voice. Our IT people were in on it. Our financials people were regularly meeting, and our people in charge of collections, digital, and marketing. So even at the beginning stage, we were already starting to get our conversations and communication going. Any questions on that? Okay. So at 6 months is when it stopped being about the bigger stuff as much and started being more on the boots groundwork, what to do right now. So after we had weeded the majority of our collection, we started to inventory. So we had a staff person who regularly came in a little earlier and would inventory our whole collection. And that way we knew exactly what books we actually had on the shelf and what books we didn't anymore, or what books we needed to move to another library because they accidentally ended up on our shelves, that kind of thing. So we made sure our collection was completely our own. So a team of staff meets weekly for updates. We did have a weekly 15-minute meeting with a manager, supervisor, the person in charge of collections, and another team member. And eventually we added in our marketing and our person in charge of the website. That way we could keep in communication with each other, like what would be our wishes, what were things that were getting stuck that we needed someone else to help with. And with that 15 minutes, just once a week, it really helped us keep in communication and make sure the other library staff members knew what they needed to know. And then we could be face to face, well, virtually. It was always virtual, but we could talk to each other and talk out different issues that came up. So when I was struggling to get communications about last minute weeding lists, I was able to talk to our collection development person, and she worked with her staff to make sure that we were able to get all the waiting lists that we wanted and that were meant to happen. Um, Same with like when we were trying to figure out stickers and because we had to label every single one of our items for our new library. It was a lot of work. Making announcements, that's really where our marketing librarian came in. So we wanted to get signs up letting people know we were moving as soon as possible because we knew that they'll ignore them. A lot of patrons would ignore them, but at least they were there for us to get the conversation going. So we were able to start saying, hey, this is our future library. So this move was a space that we were going to close because we were renting it and moving to a permanent location. So it was a huge thing for us. We wanted to make sure that all the people who regularly came to our library would know it wasn't going to be there anymore after 6 months. So we really were getting the communication out as soon as we could and trying to make it fun and letting them know that, hey, this is going to be a great opportunity for, for our community. So we started putting up pictures and we started doing videos of the new library 6 months out. We also had to start storing materials as they came in for purchasing because we didn't want all the new books coming in at once. So we had a storage facility that was climate controlled, so we didn't lose the materials that we were purchasing, that they wouldn't get wrecked. And we started storing them at 6 months out. We also finalized all the furniture we wanted so that it could get ordered and sent in time. We didn't want to be like, hey, here's this couch we wanted, but we ordered it too late. And so we're going to have to wait 6 months for it after we open. We wanted everything there that we could get there before the library opened. So we wanted to finalize everything 6 months out. We also worked together to make sure we knew when we wanted website and calendar changes and when we wanted to change so all the different forms we had on our website that said Silverstone and when we wanted to update different programs and start talking about programs even before we had an official exact day for moving. Any questions about that?
We got a question. What
All right.
vendors did you use for the furniture?
We used Freeform. We actually did for a lot of our furniture. We had 3 different vendors that they gave us pricing, and we looked them over and decided which one we wanted. So that was a year out that we started contacting all the places and saying, hey, we're moving. Do you want to give us a bid? And yeah, we ended up with Freeform just because we liked their style and we felt like it fit what we wanted at our library. Good question. The other 2, I don't remember off the top of my head because I didn't work with them as much. But if you want any more information, the people who I can get that to you, just email us. I'll have my email at the end. Any other questions? No? Okay. I'm going to move on to the next slide then. Thanks, Annie. All right, at 3 months. So we we have interlibrary loans that can be out like 2 months and they can be checked out for 2 to 3 months, depending on who checks them out to us. Some of the academic libraries give a little bit more time. Thank you for that, because usually they're items they needed for a little bit longer. But we wanted to make sure those people who do interlibrary loans through our library knew that we were going to be closing soon. So we started putting our bookmarks in the interlibrary loans at 3 months before we closed. And we started putting bookmarks in our holds at about 2 months before we closed. And every single one had these bookmarks because we wanted to be able to let especially those people know who maybe didn't talk to staff as much. They just came in, grabbed their holds and left after checking them out. So we advertised to them as much as we could. On those bookmarks were the dates of when everything stopped. So when did interlibrary loans stop? 2 months out. When did we stop doing holds? We're going to completely stop being a hold location at this time. We're going to completely stop having holds at all coming in at this time. When are we officially closing? At this time. And so we wanted we didn't have an official date, but we knew it was going to be basically in this month or season. And so we put that in our on our bookmark because we wanted to have all the dates we could for our patrons to know. And the great thing too, we had these bookmarks off at the front desk as well. And we had so many conversations from people who would pick up the bookmark and go, "Oh, you're closing." And then we could get that conversation going. This was huge because we had a lot of people who, though we were renting at the facility, really were still, they had a lot of emotions. We'd been open at that location for 15 years, and their their schedule was changing and they had a lot of emotions about it. So we were able to help them see why we needed to move and that it was going to be a good thing, but to let them also feel those emotions. It did help with really getting a lot of our regulars ready for the move to advertise so much that we were moving this far in advance. We created our packing and labeling system and worked out all the kinks because we wanted to be able to pack very quickly and also make it so we could unpack very quickly because we weren't sure how much time we would actually have because we still didn't have an official date at 3 months. And so we just wanted to be prepared in case we had to open after a week. We wanted to be prepared in case we um, ended up longer time. So we created that packing and labeling system and got all the kinks moved out about 3 to 2 months. We also prepped the collection with new labeling. So because we changed our library name from Silverstone, Meridian Library at Silverstone, to Meridian Library at Pinnacle, we had to change the stickering of every single item in our collection. We were very grateful for Weeding when this happened. So in the picture, you can see there is streams of tape with M-Pin stickers. We had to sticker about 10,000 items even after weeding. And so this was a huge effort of every single staff person. And we had some staff who were like, why don't we wait until we get closer to the move or when we're actually moving? But because it was so many items, we were like, we want to get this done and get it ready so that when we go to move, we can just pick up the items and put them on the shelf. And so we started all these little detail things before we even closed so that our moving time would be less of a stressor and less of a headache. And because it also gave us the opportunity to advertise as well, because patrons kept asking, why are you doing this to all these books and movies? And we're able to talk about, we are prepping this collection to say MPIN. And it helped advertise to everyone. Also, we made items non-renewable. So if someone checked it out, originally our collection currently was able to renew 4 times. But because we wanted all the items to come back to us and get prepared and have that sticker be put on them and get ready or weeded if they're not shelf worthy anymore, we wanted people to return them after one time of checking them out. And so we made them non-renewable at 2 months. We worked with programmers on where programs may happen when building is closed and talked about some different options they had if they were worried that this program couldn't stop, even for ever long we were going to be closed. And so we started working at 3 months, in fact, even at 4 months, to make sure that we knew what programs we were stopping and why, so that we could give patrons as much of a heads up about what to expect. We also created an opening day supply list, and we wanted to get those ordered before we closed so that we could make sure that we had all the boxes ready and any last minute things we could purchase quickly. Website drafts of web pages for new location. Our librarian that was in charge of our website was great at making sure that we could see her website draft before we opened and make sure that all the information was correct. And so she had it ready to go, and everything right on it before we even opened. It was great to be able to have that off the plate and not have to worry about that while we were in the process of moving. We also created, we had to actually do all of our building and closing dates. It was kind of hectic because it kept changing, but we finalized it. And once we finalized it, at about this time, then we got the marketing librarian to start announcing and creating posters and flyers with that date and start putting it on all of our social media, which also could get that conversation going so people could feel the emotions um, about their sadness with our library closing, but also get ready to be excited for the new building opening. Yes, Annie?
Okay, we got questions. So how big was the collection that you moved?
We moved about 10,000 items and we added about 5,000. So we are actually Silverstone was a smaller library. Um, I think what 4,000 square feet? Smaller for Meridian, I should say. But yeah, it was even with that a smaller collection compared to some of those bigger libraries, it did take a lot of time and a lot of work to get it ready.
And how many square feet is the new building?
Oh gosh, I think it's about 15,000 or 12,000? 12,000, sorry. It is 12,000. We tripled.
Wow, okay. How did you dispose of the books that you weeded?
That was another reason we started weeding very early, is because we didn't want to have a huge bin filled with books and really have that. We didn't want that image. Even though we had a lot of books that really, they just needed to go away, they were not, they weren't good for people to check out. Let's just say it that way. They were falling apart. And people were very sad when they took them home and were like, it's just falling apart. So, but we didn't want to have huge trash bags of books out in our dumpster with people going, what are you doing? And so, because we started at a year for weeding, we were able to do just a few bags each week instead of a huge bin full of books during 1 month. But we also, as well as that, there were some books that they just weren't in tip-top condition, but they still were able to be utilized by other people. So we actually did have some classrooms that we gave a large amount of picture books to. And we had a shelf that we just had, and we're like, hey, if you want to grab books from this shelf, you can. If you want to donate $1 for them, that's great. If you just want to take them, that's also great. And with that, we were also able to have even more communication with people about, yes, we are moving. And it really helped. We had very few books that weren't completely horrible that we had to throw away because we had been working on it for so long that most of the items that we weeded out that were in semi-decent condition were able to go to a new home. We gave some to like Boys and Girls Club. We gave some to um, different different nonprofits, and they ended up in a lot of good homes.
Nice. Also, were you able to put any of those books into recycling, or was it all like trash garbage?
So some of the items we did put in recycling. Um, I admit on a previous move I had, I found out that it was harder to recycle and we didn't have all the recycling we needed. And so I purposely was like trying to reuse as much as I could. Because I wasn't sure how much we could do recycling, but we did put some into recycling that were like the kind of papers that could be recycled. Yes.
Hmm. How many days was the library closed?
So it was actually interesting because we kept changing what day we would open. So there was some time that we thought we were only going to be closed for like 2 weeks. And there was a time we even worried it would be like 1 week. And so that's part of the reason why we were very careful and planning out our packing so early, is because we worried it would be very quick. It turned out that we did close August 31st and we opened September 30th. It was our final, just because there were some things that last minute needed to be moved, and there were some higher up things on purchasing, because just the logistics of the financials, that we did end up staying closed for a month. It was all utilized though. Like, being closed for a month actually did help us a lot. We were able to get a lot of training for staff, and our staff did appreciate having time to really get to know the space before opening and to get the space as settled as they could get it.
One last question. Did
Yes.
you coordinate with a moving company with the project management and timelines, or is the planning all the responsibility of staff?
Thank you. That was a great question. So in a previous move I had, we actually had a moving company that was awesome. And they were the ones who moved all our books, and they wrapped them in saran wrap on carts and put them on a moving truck. And they were the ones that put it on the shelf. I was wondering if we would have that here. We did not do that here. Instead, we had our staff packing, and then we had a moving company that moved the boxes. And here in Meridian, we are lucky enough to have, we actually utilized a company that was amazing. We had our jails have a moving company that they use. So people who are on doing better behaved, I guess, I don't know, but who are able to come out to the community and work, they came and moved us, and they did an excellent job. We had a great time with them. Yeah, they did a really good job. Any other? All right. Awesome. Thank you for all these questions. I love these clarifying questions. All right, I'm going to move to the next slide. So on the next few slides, we had so much going on that I'm breaking it up into materials and website and what was going on for the patrons and staff. So at 1 month, this is 1 month before we closed. We have our official day of closing. We've been advertising for 5 months that we're closing, but here is that final countdown. We stopped interlibrary loans completely. We made it so that our own library items were no longer filling holds for other people. They could no longer request holds for our items. We ordered packing and cleaning supplies, which you're going to need a lot of. We had a lot of dusters, and we needed even more. We also had a lot of Clorox wipes, and by the end of our month, cleaning to move and then cleaning the new location to get ready to move into it, we ended up needing even more Clorox wipes. We ordered our opening day supply list. So we had some things we're like, oh, what do we need for our opening day? And we started to make sure that we had all of those coming in, because we didn't want a shipment to like be derailed, and then by the time it actually comes to us, our library is closed, which we did only have one item that ended up going to us after we were closed. So we purposely made sure that we were ordering things ahead of time. We measured our entire existing collection in inches, and that allowed us to estimate what our incoming 5,000 books would be like. And we started putting on the new shelves at the new library all of where all the collections would be. And because we measured so detailed, down to the inch, we were able to estimate where every single collection was going to be, and really didn't have to move as much later because of doing that ahead of time. It really helped a lot with unpacking too, so that we could have multiple people working on the same collection at different spots. We took down everything that referenced Silverstone on our website except, hey, we're moving. We also published the alert of our closure at Silverstone on August 31st and our opening at Pinnacle on September 30th, and really encourage people to celebrate with us. And we had one of the cool things about moving to a larger space is we actually were going to have rooms that were available for reservation, but we didn't want, there were people literally calling us before we even closed, trying to see if they could reserve rooms for our future open library. And we were like, nope, we're not doing it to the public yet. We're not open to the public yet, but we did open for programs so we can make sure those room reservations for our programs coming in our new library, that we had this space for them. All right, I'll move to the next slide for 1 month. It focuses on the public and staff. So we did have a Goodbye Silverstone library party. We had it 1 month out and we left all the decorations up because then people would go, oh, you're closing. It was amazing how many people still are that were our regulars were still like, wow, you actually are closing. We're like, yes, we are. And this is when. And our new library was starting to get lots of materials in. Our manager was over there making sure that the shelving was coming in, the furniture was coming in, and was there for the deliveries. And I was over at Silverstone making sure that everything was getting ready for the close. So we had to keep in constant communication even when we were in separate buildings a lot. Along with all that furniture coming in, our manager was also running tours for staff at other locations so they could see it and get excited with us, and for our community partners. So we started having, like, the Idaho Commission for Libraries came in before we opened. We had like people that worked at schools came in. We had people at businesses that were really excited and wanted to be part of it coming in. We had our friends group come in. We had our foundation come in. So it was really, we were running two buildings at the same time. And so we were so glad that we had gotten some of our stuff done previously. So we had the headspace to run two buildings at the same time. We also did our final planning of the ribbon cutting, making sure we had who was speaking and when, who was actually doing the scissors cutting, what news companies we wanted to come and do interviews, when, what days. So we're working with our marketing librarian a lot to make sure that we had those scheduled out and we knew that we'd have people at the building ready for them when they came. We also scheduled our staff trainings while the building was closed. We used that as an opportunity to go through a fire drill. We used it as an opportunity to do have a police officer come and do a lockdown drill. What would we do if there was a shooter? We had someone come in and do a Narcan training. So all these trainings that we'd wanted to do but were too long, when you have a building to run, we were like, awesome, let's have this when the staff can come, especially because we had planned to move quickly in like 1 to 2 weeks, but now we had a month. And so we're like, yay, this is wonderful. We can do all these trainings and really get settled in our space, make sure it's exactly what we want before the patrons come. But yeah, definitely we had to make sure that someone was at the building getting ready to move, but we also had to make sure that one of our staff was, and usually was our manager, was there for installations and deliveries, a person who knew where everything was supposed to go and could let them know. Yes, Annie.
We have a question. How long was it safe to run tours in the new building while it wasn't under construction, but not ready to open?
So we worked a lot with our construction crew on that. And as long as it was just a few people on the tour, we started doing tours a month before, 2 months before we opened the new space. Once we had all of like the major construction done, we were able to start doing those tours. And it was great to be able to have some of our partners be able to advertise for us as well, that this was a great space.
And was anyone allowed to take a tour, or was it limited to like certain people or certain groups?
We did limit it. So we did have a lot of patrons who were very excited, who were already going to that place and trying to get in to see it. But we wanted to keep it somewhat closed off because we wanted to build up the excitement. And so we encouraged them to use other libraries, and that we weren't going to do tours for just everyone. We kept it to some of the people who had been helping us along the process, and some of our partners and some of our city council. Anyway, but yeah, we did limit it to partners and the like, and then invited everyone who wanted to come to the opening. Thank you. All right, 2 weeks, materials and website. We stopped holds 2 weeks in advance. So our policy with our holds is that they can stay on the hold shelf for a week and then they expire. So the reason we have it at 2 weeks is because, one, we wanted to have enough time for expiring, but we also wanted to clear off as much as we could. So we are lucky enough to be in a consortium where we get holds coming in from other libraries, which is so awesome. But we had some books that are really, really popular that people put on hold, and they were like 150th in line, and they wanted to pick up at our location. So we had to stop doing those holds 2 weeks in advance because we still had those items coming in, and we needed to contact those people, let them know our library is closed, so you will not be able to pick it up. And so we gave ourselves 2 weeks to really get that communication out to people that our library is closed. Where would you like to pick up this item? Because you won't be able to pick it up here. And we had about 90% of the people reply back, which was awesome. We also put in that email, if you don't reply back to us, it will go to this location. And we specified Meridian Library at Cherry Lane would be where it would go. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I want to pick my library, where to pick it up. So we did want to give our patrons and ourselves plenty of time for getting that communication out and getting responses back. So 2 weeks, by the time we closed, because we had put it out so far, our hold shelf was empty because we had made sure it would be that as many people as we could would have their holds going elsewhere. So yeah, same with what I had on the second line. We contacted everyone who had holds that had been waiting so long for their holds to come in and had requested our library like 3 or 4 months ago to have the hold come in. We'd let them know, hey, if you have it as your location, you're not going to be able to pick it up, and you're going to have to wait even longer. And so they were like, oh yeah, definitely send it to this other library. And it worked out really well, and we were able to get a lot of them, catch them before they came through. There were a couple that still slipped through, but if we hadn't done that, it would have been more like hundreds. So we also finalized return items to be diverted to another location. We worked with the Meridian Library at Cherry Lane, and they were kind enough to have one of their rooms, actually, I think it maybe was 2 by the end, intercept all of our books so that we could have books still coming through. But they then delivered all the books to us once we were ready for the items, and they held on to them for 2 weeks. We also made sure that last minute deliveries went to a different location. So we did have some things that still were pushed out that were furniture, or like we realized, oh, we need garbage cans. And we ordered them and we had them delivered to another library. So we had those delivered to Meridian Library Orchard Park. Since Cherry Lane was already taking care of our books and movies coming in, we picked a different library for shipments to come in. And they held on to them for us for a week or two and then delivered them when we were ready for those items to come in. So we went to our new library, and because we had already measured out all of our collections by how many inches they were, so like adult fiction A has this many inches, adult fiction B had this many inches, We then were able to, we used magnets, magnets that also were white, like you could use whiteboard markers. And we were able to write on all of them, this library, this shelf is going to be for nonfiction 000 to 100. This shelf is going to be for 000 to 100. And we did that for every single shelf, what we planned to have on it. And that way, when we were able to unpack, people could look at the box, find the shelf that it was supposed to go to, and immediately start unpacking instead of waiting for all of the boxes to be put into a location and then shelved from A to Z. They could shelve whatever section. And it actually worked really well. We didn't have to do a lot of moving after we already had the shelf books on there. So our shelving company told us they would clean the shelves, and they did. They just didn't clean it up to the standards that we had. So that was one of those things that we were cleaning our previous shelves at our old library, and those shelves were actually went to a new home, but we had new shelves at our new library that we also had to clean. And so there was a lot of cleaning going on at this time, and it was pretty messy. So I would say if you're moving similar to us, have as many dusting rags as you can. We also did our change of address form at the 2-week mark. Awesome. What questions do we have, Annie?
I think you might cover this in the upcoming slides, but how long did it take you to actually pack up the materials that you were moving? And how far out did you start packing things?
All right, good question. That is coming up in a couple slides, but I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit. Because we had practiced so much ahead of time, and because we had arranged it and we were worried we'd be moving in a week and a half to 2 weeks, we were able to pack everything in 2 days, all 10,000 items. And it was ready for the movers. So that's just our collection though. The program materials, we started packing a month out. I forgot to put that in the slides, but yeah, we started having our programmers go through all the materials and donate them to schools. Or if they didn't really use them, they're like, hey, go ahead and donate that to a school or a childcare so that we have the space we need, because you never have as much. You may have more storage than you did before, but for some reason it always fills up. So we started having them work on that about 2 months to 1 month out. And so they were already packed for the most part, about halfway packed before we closed on program materials. And then we finished the rest of it after we finished our collection packing. But we were asked not to pack any of our collection until we actually were closed. And so we organized it as best we could and really planned it out. And yeah, it ended up taking just a day and a half.
Could you go over where to obtain boxes that you used and what did you do with them afterwards?
Good question. So we were lucky enough that a local business that actually orders shipping materials, they were like, hey, can we buy your boxes for you? And because we had already measured so much and we knew how much boxes we would need, we were able to tell them, yeah, could you order us, I think I'm trying to remember, was it 500 boxes? We purposely ordered more because we did not want staff getting hurt packing the boxes too heavy. And we also designed it so that it could be immediately put on the shelf straight away when they unpacked. So we ordered more boxes than technically maybe were needed. And I would have to get back to you on which company they ordered from. The name is just not coming to me. But we we purposely ordered very sturdy boxes and it was excellent. And we ordered so many boxes that they actually sent packing tape with it. But we had lots of other packing tape too. So what we did with the boxes afterwards. So for those who are not in the Meridian Library District, we've been moving and like updating our libraries because we got an amazing library levy passed. And so we saved all the boxes for the next move. So they are currently in storage, waiting for the Meridian Library at Cherry Lane to have their move, which will be coming up in a few months. All right, 2 weeks, staff and public. So we stopped all programs a month before we moved because we wanted our programmers to focus on packing. And so our goodbye parties were the last programs we had. We packed all the program supplies we donated to schools and childcares. Some of the items were like, we haven't used these for years. We didn't even remember we had these. And it, I believe a lot of classrooms were very glad to get some of those items. We published our press release to have that the library was going to be opening at Pinnacle. And we sent out our first round of distributions of that press release to all the media contacts, which is part of the reason we had several news several news organizations broadcasting that we were opening our new Pinnacle library. We published our Google business profile. So we made sure that the Meridian Library at Pinnacle was published and that the Meridian Library at Silverstone was taken down. And we started publishing some of the web pages we had already been prepping ahead of time that were related to our Pinnacle library. And one of the things that we realized we needed to have happen and is that we should have arranged for more garbage and recycling pickups during moving. With all of the, we didn't as much, but we were able to at the last minute. We got a recycling bin because we had so many moving boxes for the furniture and the books coming in. And so we had a lot of recycling. But we also had a lot of garbage because all the things that were inside those boxes that couldn't be recycled went to the garbage. And all of our cleaning supplies that we were using, there was a lot of garbage that we hadn't expected. And so we were fortunate to be able to, at the last minute, arrange for another pickup of garbage and to arrange for more recycling pickup. But yeah, that was one thing that we learned that we want to pass on. Make sure that you have more garbage pickups during the time of moving and more recycling because you'll need it. Any questions? All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So on moving day, every single shelf before we actually packed it up, we dusted. And I mean, we had been weeding for a year out to 6 months, and we still found some items that we were like, oh, this has to go away. But fortunately, because we had been doing so much weeding, it was only like 2 bags, and it did not look bad in the garbage dumpster. But it also made us feel better because we had given away so many other items, and because we'd been weeding so far in advance, we were able to give away more items, whereas moving, we were so focused on moving, we couldn't give away. We couldn't even have people come and get them. So we didn't have to throw away very many things. So we packed in shelving order and we purposely had like this side of the box to this side of the box, you will pack in this order. So we also did some shelf reading. And then we trained every single box had a color dot for what collection it was. And then we marked, you can see in the pictures, we have a lot of writing on them. We marked what sections were contained in that box. And then once that section was packed entirely, we put how many boxes were in that collection and what number that box was. So that way, when people came and saw those boxes, they were like, oh, this is how many boxes we're expecting in this area. And we knew what section exactly we were still looking for with the box. So it was nice because we knew what to look for when we started unpacking. So we had a person that was at the moving location. So I stayed at our old location when our movers came. And I helped make sure that they were moving them and the boxes we wanted to go first out, and made sure that everything was going smoothly on our end, and then phoned to let my manager know at the other location at the new library, hey, they're coming to you, get everyone ready for them to come. So we had our point person at each location that was well aware of what we wanted to do and why. We also gave all staff designated roles over the collections. There were a couple people that stayed with me at the old location and made sure that everything was getting moved out correctly and in the right order. And we also had everyone at the other location knowing, okay, you're going to work at this collection. You're going to work at this collection. You're going to be unpacking. You're going to be taking down boxes. You're going to be moving the boxes to the right spot. And we had plenty of maps showing where those spots were going to be at the new library. Also, we learned from previous moving that bookends, another library that had been built before us, their bookends were the small, tiny ones that someone else ordered because they're like, they're bookends. We realized very quickly at that library that we needed taller bookends. And so we made sure that we had the right size of bookends before we started putting them on the new shelf. And we made sure that the box of bookends got there before most of the book items, because we wanted to make sure that they had all they needed to unpack and that they weren't waiting for anything to start unpacking. Because our linear inch measurements, we had like 4 people unpacking adult fiction at the same time, and they were all at different shelves, but they knew that they could unpack. And because we had measured so clearly, we were able to unpack much faster than if we had to do it from front to back or back to front. One of the things we did learn is our moving boxes, while they were incredibly sturdy, they were also not as well designed for Sharpies. So it was hard to write in Sharpie on our boxes and to really write clearly in some of our words. So one of the things we did learn is if you want to have it very clear, you might want to buy labels to write on. So you could just write on the label, and you could even write ahead of time with some of the things and then just put it on the box, because it was a little hard to write at weird angles sometimes too. All right, any questions about moving day?
No questions, but there's been a couple kudos on how impressive the organization and project management was in this project, because it clearly paid off.
Thank you. It did make moving so much easier. Our moving was actually really fun. And because we weren't stressed and we had it all planned, it planning ahead just made it so much easier. All right, so in the period of time in between that moving day and opening day, we had a lot going on. We unpacked all our boxes. So packing took about a day and a half. Unpacking took about a week, because we wanted to make sure all the collections were ready, and we fortunately had cleaned off all the shelves, or it would have taken even longer. We did have some collections that once we put them on the shelf, we realized, oh, we don't want it there. It's not as useful there. We want another collection there. And so we did have some last minute moving that we did. Staff were very busy doing that, but also very busy doing some other prep and unpacking all of our program supplies too and getting everything organized. But opening day, because it was amazing. It was so much fun. We turned Pinnacle on as a hold location that morning. It was all ready to go. Pinnacle just appeared on the website. Thank you, Aaron Stoddard, for that. It was perfect timing. It just appeared and was like, hey, welcome, we're here. We purposely had a dedicated photographer because we knew that if we relied on our staff to take pictures, we would not get the pictures. So we had a person who just went around the whole opening taking pictures, and we got a lot of great shots of staff and got a lot of great shots of patrons, and it really was great. We had staff from other locations come and help us because we knew it would be crazy. And we made sure every staff member had a shirt. Now, we were fortunate enough to have our foundation help us get the shirts. If you don't have the money to buy matching shirts, I would still recommend having everyone wear a white shirt or everyone wear a black shirt or a certain color, because it really helped with all those patrons and all of our guests knowing who they could talk to find books or to check out. Because we had 1,323 patrons walking through that door that day, and a lot of checkout items and a lot of making new cards. We had a dedicated people counter. We had one that was electronic, but if you do not have an electronic people counter, I would highly recommend you have a person at your door counting, because otherwise you will miss it. There was just so much going on. It was huge. But because, I mean, my manager and I were there from 8 to 8. And it was a very busy day, but by the end we were able to just sit back and relax, and it was a great day. But part of the reason it was a great day, I think, was because there was a lot that happened before that helped, that was fixed and made it a great day, because something will always come up that day that you're not planning for. So it's good to have all the stuff ahead of time done so you're ready. Here's my contact information and also the contact information of my manager, Dusty Waltner. We'd be happy to talk to anyone about it. We've also done some different types of moves with libraries as well. We know each one is slightly different and has some different needs, but we're happy to be a sounding board to talk things out. And Annie, sorry it took so long, but any last questions?
Oh, that's fabulous. Yes, so if anybody has any questions, so is there anything you would do differently?
Anything I would do differently? Um, the stickers on, just to put on the boxes, would be something I do differently, because writing on boxes was really funky when you had a stack of 3 boxes and you had to write on each one. And our handwriting was really weird. Uh, one of the things I would do differently is uh, I might even have done even more communication with other library staff and just letting them know even ahead of time, hey, this is what's happening, even like just a brief email out to everyone to just say, hey, this is what's happening if anyone asks. Because we had so much going on and we were so involved in it, we thought everyone knew, but really they didn't. And just keeping as much communication going as you can with everyone involved, and even people you don't think would be involved, like the front desk staff of other libraries that are your neighbors, had a lot of questions too. So letting them know and keeping them updated on what you're doing will save you in the long run.
Would typed and printed out labels have worked for that as well?
You know, the hard thing is typed would not as worked would not have worked for what we needed as well, because we didn't know how much would be in the box down to like the letter. We knew estimate, but we didn't know exact. And so we still needed to have something that we could write that day.
Did you have a company help design the shelf locations and the layout, or was that a staff project?
So the shelf layouts were actually part of the thing that we worked on with our construction crew. And when we were working it out with the construction manager, we had a person in charge of all the construction management who would like make sure that every single part and piece was handled. And we worked that out with him. We helped design that with also our furniture company and our shelving company. And so there were several people involved in the placement of where our shelves were and how to fit in as much as we could.
How many staff do you have at the Pinnacle Branch Library?
So originally at Silverstone, we had 12. We now have 20.
Nice. And then how many branches does the Meridian Library District have?
So that's a fun question because it depends on what you count as a branch. So our main branches are Cherry Lane, Orchard Park, Pinnacle, and Unbound Library. Those are our main ones, but we also have our tiny library that our staff run, which is just a 320 square foot library of youth services materials. But we also have a bookmobile. And yeah, so building locations, we have four.
And then do you happen to know off the top of your head how many total staff in the district?
I think we just had a staff day and we have 115.
Wow.
It's grown a lot. When I first started about 8 years ago, we had about 70.
Yeah, that's a lot of growth.
Yeah.
Uh, so no more questions, but I'm seeing a lot of thank yous. How fantastic your presentation was. Uh, Incredibly well executed and complex project. Super helpful. So yeah, I think this has been a huge hit. Thank you so much, Maria, for sharing your expertise and your lessons learned from this activity.
Thank you so much, Annie. And thank you all for coming or for watching this webinar later. It's great. And definitely, yeah, if you have any questions, please contact.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. I'm going to turn off the recording now.